They're just constantly on us. TV, radio, the mail, on our phones, texting. Hey, Bill, Tim Wall's here. You up? They're everywhere all the time. Jesus Christ, fuck off. Let mommy put her purse down.
And what I could see is replacing the vice president because, yeah, she's just not very popular
Hasn't
anywhere. And it didn't seem to work out. And I don't know, that's been done before on a ticket. I just think she's a bad politician.
The Democrats are desperately trying to find someone, anyone, to steer their sinking ship as they stumble toward re-election. And guess who's suddenly resurfacing? Yep, Kamala Harris. Because nothing says fresh leadership like bringing back the least inspiring vice president in recent memory. If you've watched Bill Maher for more than 5 minutes, you know he's never exactly been a Kamala fan. And spoiler alert, that hasn't changed. In a scathing monologue, Maher didn't just dismiss the Kamala 2024 idea, he torched it. So yeah, grab your popcorn. And maybe a fire extinguisher to...
When Joe Biden was still hanging on to be the candidate, many of the pundits said that to switch him out this late would cause chaos. Yeah, that was never my position. And indeed, what happened was Kamala Harris said, "Oh, look, I guess it's my turn." And the next day, a grateful nation handed her $500 million. The only reason we stay stuck in permanent campaign mode is money. It's estimated this year that $16 billion will be spent on political ads. It's time we admit that the endless campaign exists only to enrich advertisers, political consultants, and what's left of the news media.
Maher kicked off his rant by reminding everyone that it took years, not weeks, not months, but years, for Joe Biden to finally admit what many Americans had already noticed. He no longer had the mental sharpness to run for re-election. Those who dared to speak up were dismissed, silenced, or buried under so-called fact checks. But when Biden stumbled in the presidential debate, what were once called conspiracy theories suddenly became common sense. And how did the Democrats respond? Did they rally behind a strong, dynamic leader? Of course not. They passed the baton to Kamala Harris, the vice president so absent during her term that you'd be forgiven for forgetting she was in office at all. She ran unopposed, unchallenged. And what did that deliver? One of the most devastating electoral defeats in modern American history.
People didn't used to get sick of the candidates because you barely ever saw them unless you happened to be standing at the back end of a train. But now we never stop seeing them. The winner in modern elections comes down to who we're less tired of. They're just constantly on us. TV, radio, the mail, on our phones, texting. Hey, Bill, Tim Wall's here. You up? They're everywhere all the time. Jesus Christ, fuck off. Let mommy put her purse down.
One of the milder reasons Maher believes Kamala Harris tanked the election. People were simply tired of seeing her everywhere, and not in a strong presidential way, but in a forced, over-the-top PR blitz. She and Tim Walz became an unavoidable duo, popping up like spam emails you never signed up for. They were in your inbox, on your TV, crashing your concerts, photobombing your Instagram reels, interrupting YouTube videos, and showing up on your TikTok feed. It was a full-blown saturation campaign. But instead of inspiring confidence, it triggered widespread fatigue. It felt overwhelming, like a relentless marketing push that didn't know when to stop. Except the product being sold was a historically unpopular vice president with no clear message and even less authenticity. Rather than connecting with voters, the strategy came across as desperate, tone-deaf, and completely out of touch. As Maher sharply noted, this wasn't just overexposure. It was political self-sabotage in high definition.
What I could see is replacing the vice president because, yeah, she's just not very popular anywhere. And it didn't seem to work out. And I don't know, that's been done before on a ticket. I just think she's a bad politician.
Or another reason Maher believes Kamala Harris is destined to flop as a candidate. She's simply not a strong politician, and not in the endearing outsider sense either. Maher could list plenty of political missteps, but one glaring weakness stands out: her struggle with unscripted questions. The moment she's pushed off her talking points, it's like watching someone freeze under pressure, visibly uncomfortable and unprepared. We've all seen the now infamous moments: rambling, disjointed responses that go on too long and ultimately say very little. It's not just a communication issue, it's a credibility problem. And in high-stakes politics, that's a tough flaw to overlook.
Need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go.
I do believe that we should have rightly believed, but we certainly believe that certain issues are just settled. And that's why I do believe that we are living in real unsettled times.
I've even heard scripted interviews can be difficult to watch. She often fumbles, backtracks, and delivers responses that leave voters more confused than informed. For someone with years in public office, her communication skills feel unexpectedly unrefined. In politics, clarity and confidence are essential, and time and again, Kamala Harris falls short. Maher isn't exaggerating here. He's pointing out what many have observed. Remember when she mistakenly named North Korea as a U.S. ally? That wasn't just a slip. It reinforced doubts about her readiness on the global stage.
The United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. In the North, we see a brutal dictatorship, rampant human rights violations, and an unlawful weapons program.
Seriously, how does anyone accidentally call North Korea an ally? That's not just a minor slip-up, that's a full-blown geopolitical blunder. Sure, we might laugh it off if it came from someone with a flawless track record, but let's be honest, this is Kamala Harris we're talking about. She's practically built a reputation around awkward misstatements and clumsy speeches. At this point, she's not just prone to gaffes, she's become known for them. Now picture this: President Kamala Harris in a high-stakes, closed-door meeting with world leaders, NATO, the G7, or a tense negotiation with China or Russia. Then she drops another puzzling off-script comment. The room goes quiet, translators scramble, and global markets start to twitch. These aren't harmless slip-ups. They're the kind of errors that can ripple into real-world consequences. When the job demands precision, diplomacy, and global awareness, the last thing the country can afford is a leader who struggles to deliver a clear, confident message. Maher didn't just make a point, he sounded the alarm.
This is Kamala's great dilemma. Trump is invulnerable to an October surprise, but she is very vulnerable because she's the one who is still undefined. And as she showed in this week's Bret Baier interview, her go-to when attacked for her own actions is usually Trump is worse. Okay, we know that. But now undecided voters want to hear about you. They want someone to vote for. This election comes down to this. Trump has a coalition of voters made up of A, people who really do like him, and B, people who think with all of his flaws, he's still better than far-left insanity.
Kamala Harris was so ineffective on the campaign trail that whenever she got backed into a corner, she defaulted to the same worn-out line. Well, Trump was worse, as if simply not being Donald Trump automatically qualifies someone to be president. It wasn't a strategy, it was a political cop-out. According to Maher, one of the real tests of Harris's leadership was whether she had the backbone to stand up to the increasingly rigid demands of her party's most vocal factions. Would she lead with independent thought, or just echo whatever was trending? Spoiler alert, she folded, repeatedly. Time and again, Harris showed she lacked the willingness to push back against extreme rhetoric. Instead of standing firm with conviction, she echoed the loudest voices in the room, regardless of whether they aligned with practical governance. For Maher, and for many disillusioned voters, that wasn't just a red flag. It was confirmation that Harris wasn't ready to lead a deeply divided nation. In a time that demands clarity, strength, and principle, what she offered was cautious conformity.
The voters' big doubt about Kamala is, are you part of far-left insanity? The attack ad I see 10 times a day, and a question Brett Baer aimed at her on Wednesday was about her saying in 2019 that she supported providing taxpayer-funded sex change operations to illegal immigrants in prison. Something that's actually never happened and has no real bearing on anybody's life. But it's a litmus test for voters out there who want to know of the Democrat, is there anything your fringe can suggest that will ever make you say, no, that's fucking ridiculous? It's getting late early, and we can't afford any more bad answers like this one last week.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
No bueno.
And this was the breaking point for many voters. After 4 years of increasingly exhausting identity-driven politics under President Biden, Americans had one pressing question. Would Kamala Harris continue down that same divisive path, or take it even further? Unfortunately, Harris offered no reassurance, no clear vision, no indication that she would pivot or bring balance. In fact, her silence, or worse, her apparent alignment, signaled that she might double down on the same polarizing, performative policies that had already pushed large segments of the electorate away. Voters were looking for strength, common sense, and a return to stability. What they got from Harris was ambiguity cloaked in activist slogans. So, when the moment came to choose, they turned to the one candidate who seemed to speak directly to that growing desire for restoration: President Trump. Love him or hate him, Trump offered something Harris simply couldn't: hope. Hope for economic recovery, energy independence, law and order, and unapologetic leadership that doesn't back down under pressure. For many Americans, he wasn't just a candidate. He was a course correction.
Maybe try. Joe Biden generally did a good job, but sure, I wish we'd tightened the border sooner, as we have done now, and trust me, I learned my lesson, and that's never going to happen again. Kamala, it's so important that you win this election, not just for the sake of retaining a real democracy and for the good of the world, but also because I predicted a month ago you'd win this thing, and if you blow it, it's going to make me look bad.
One of the major reasons Maher believes Kamala Harris is unfit for the presidency? Just look at her handling of the border crisis. When she was appointed as the administration's lead on immigration, a high-profile and urgent assignment, she failed to rise to the challenge. Under her watch, the southern border didn't just weaken, it buckled. Millions of migrants crossed into the U.S., overwhelming communities and raising serious national security concerns. But it wasn't just the numbers. According to Maher and many others, the border became a pipeline for trafficking of people, drugs, and weapons. Dangerous substances like fentanyl flooded American cities, driving overdose deaths to alarming levels. Illegal weapons moved into the hands of criminal networks, leaving law enforcement scrambling to keep up. And where was Harris? Largely absent, offering vague statements, avoiding the front lines, and steering clear of the crisis she was tasked with managing. If this was a test of leadership, she didn't just fail. She barely showed up.
Got a really good prediction record, so please don't fuck this up. Kamala, ever since I put down my marker on you and said you'd win and I wasn't even worried about it, everyone, everywhere, on the road, in LA, texting me, emailing me, stopping me in restaurants, asking me, Bill, are you sure? No, I'm not fucking sure. What am I, Kreskin? Of course I'm not sure, but that's my gut. I think Kamala Harris wants this. I think she can do this, to say nothing of, if she loses, she'll never hear the end of it from Joe. I told you I was the only one who could beat him, Biden.
Well, Maher's prediction may not have changed the outcome, but it was spot on. Kamala Harris lost the election, and not by a slim margin. Voters overwhelmingly rejected her candidacy. But here's the thing. Even in defeat, Maher's criticisms still hold weight. Harris hasn't evolved, adapted, or even attempted to shift course. In fact, she seems to be doubling down on the very traits that made her unelectable in the first place. Case in point, her recent appearance at a major real estate conference. It was a prime opportunity to present real ideas and show leadership. Instead, she delivered yet another one of her signature word salads, rambling, vague, and frustratingly incoherent. The result? A room full of confused attendees wondering what, if anything, had just been said. No substance, no clear message. Just another example of political communication gone wrong. If Harris truly sees herself as a serious contender in the future, step one might be mastering clear, direct communication. Until then, Maher's takedown remains not just criticism, but a harsh and accurate reality check. And that wraps up today's video. If you found it insightful, hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.